Hey there, and welcome to the Brittany Wheeler Show. Join Brittany as she interviews incredible people whose stories will uplift you and remind you the life you long for is just ahead. Buckle up for an inspirational ride to your best life. Take it away, Britt.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Brittany Wheeler Show. It is your host, Brittany Wheeler of the Brittany Wheeler Show, and we are back again for an incredible conversation. If this is your first time listening, welcome, because your socks are about to be blown off. I am so excited. My guests and I were actually talking, like, both aligned of how excited we are for this conversation. And if this is your second, third, 60th time listening, then this is just going to be another bike ride of incredible inspiration, motivation, and leaving fulfilled and being like, okay, if they can do it, then I can do it too. So let me go ahead and introduce our guest so we can get started. He is a father, he is a son, he's a cousin, he's a police officer, he's a professional bodybuilder, he's a leader, he's a community pillar. And I think there's more titles he's going to have in the future that I believe that are going to happen, but there's many things still yet to come. So I am so excited and grateful to welcome my new friend, Joel Velez, to the Brittany Wheeler Show. Welcome.
Hi there, Brittany. Thank you for having me. I'm excited, and I think we're gonna have a pretty great episode here.
Such a great episode. This is your first podcast, so welcome to your first podcast moment, but it's going to be great. So this next segment, I pass to the guests because I love this. I mean, you've heard, so you are a referral, right, from my friend Kevin Baca, who had an episode last year. So if people are listening, go back to listen to Kev's episode. And, his segment of me was hilarious, and some of the things that I actually do not remember in college, but this part is a segment that I pass back to my guests to give the audience like a really good foundation of who are we, right? Like, we're going to get to know you and your story, but how do we know each other? And so I'd love for you to share whatever you feel fits best, whether it's how we met, a story, or why you said yes to this podcast. And I think that'll really give the audience a good intro of where we're going to go in the next 45 minutes or so.
Absolutely. So yes, Kevin is a close friend of mine. He's a coworker. He's also my bodybuilding coach. So when he referred me and said, "Hey, I think you'd be great for this," my initial reaction was absolutely not. I'll be candid with you. I was like, "No way. There's nothing special about my story or my life's journey or anything like that." And it took a little bit of convincing, but the way he described it, the way Kevin described it, it's like, "Buddy, yes, there is, and people should hear about your upbringing, the hurdles you faced, and where you are now, and where life has taken you." Because I'm very guarded in speaking of what my past has looked like. So it took a bit of convincing, but if I can inspire anyone and use this as a platform, I'm all for it. So here I am.
I love that. Well, thank you for saying yes. And Kev, if you're listening, thank you for doing some work behind the scenes and convincing Joel that he is a good fit for the show, because I know that he will be. And what was really special about Kevin's episode, and I know the theme is going to be the same here, is Kev took us on a journey of vulnerability, a journey of based on what he does. Now, I know the man behind the uniform, you know the man behind the uniform, but based on what he does, there's a definition, there's a perception of what it means to be a police officer. And I am just so fortunate to get to have you and him in a seat where you are just you. You are not the man on the street serving your community. You're not the man in the car enforcing the law. It's just you. And I think there's such an incredible responsibility and such a gift that by sharing this story, what's going to come of that, the hearts that are going to be healed, the conversations that are going to be happening, people will, in my opinion, begin to grow relationships with law enforcement and the men and women on the streets in a way because of your vulnerability and being willing to share that, like, wow, that is your job. It is not who you are. And so I thank you for coming on the show and being willing to talk about the hard things, because I think there's a lot of officers as well as civilians that are going to be really blessed by this conversation and what you're going to share.
Yes, definitely. I agree completely. I think those hard conversations are how things change and how people start to see in someone else's, perspective, right? Those hard conversations, and they're important to have. So.
Well, let's go back. Let's just get in real quick. Let's just go back to your childhood. What was it like? I mean, you're from Massachusetts. You live in New Hampshire. What was it like growing up in Massachusetts? You know, and how did those years really form some of your dreams and where you are now?
Yeah. So I grew up in Western Massachusetts, Springfield area. If you don't know Massachusetts, Springfield can kind of be, it can kind of be hard hitting, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah.
Um, I grew up with, a single mother and who did a really good job, worked really hard to keep me out of things that would have definitely prevented me from becoming a police officer, right? Um, and looking back, you don't know as a child, right, why you're not allowed to do certain things or why you can't go certain places or hang out with even certain family members. But looking back as a full grown man, I'm super thankful to have had, uh, her foot up my rear end, for lack of a better phrase. Um, and I often thank her now and I owe her a lot, because, when you're growing up in the projects, right? Again, that's all you know. So you don't know that it's not the best area, right? Because there's other kids, and it's the community feel, the community aspect. I feel like a lot of people don't know that there is a very big presence in that. Um, yeah, there's violence and there's crime and there's drugs and there's gang life, um, but there's kind of a childlike wonder, right, where you're not really seeing that stuff. All you know is this is my group of friends. We all live in the same area. We're all tight. We all know each other's parents. And you're not really thinking that there's like an element of danger or things that'll sway your life in one direction, right? Because you're just not thinking like that as a kid. Um, and even when we were living in that area, um, I was actually either driven or taxied uh, to a better school district in Northampton. Um, that was a choice that my mother made because she knew the school districts were a lot better up there. So she made it happen every day. Every day she made sure I got to school. If she, because she was in college and was working two or three jobs at a time. Um, so it was like a collective effort for sure. Uh, but I always made it, and I ended up going all the way from elementary school uh, through high school in the Northampton school system. So, you know, I got it was it was like two different worlds, if that makes sense. Like I was going to school with a lot of wealthy kids that lived up there, but then going back home, and it was almost like I was clocking out of work, and then I could be myself when I got back at the end of the day.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I have 17,000 things that are like literally stirring in my mind. The first thing I want to ask is like, how or what do you think like motivated your mother to make that decision to say no? Like, I'm stopping this generational impact, this generational curse, if you will, with my son, and we're doing something different.
Uh, she has groomed me from probably from birth, uh, in her eyes to be successful. And what I mean by that is just making it up and out. And we did that while I was still a kid. Um, we ultimately, after she finished college, we moved out towards Northampton, and for her that was a huge win. And she always steered me in the direction of either joining some branch of the military or becoming a police officer. That is what she wanted for me my whole life. And then, just looking around at her surroundings, because we've talked about this now, now that an adult, and we are more like best friends. Like it's more like we're best friends than mother and son. I'll tell you that. She never ever wanted to see me on a corner slinging dope ever. That was like her biggest fear.
Yeah. Okay. and I think that first of all, I just episode came out in current time. Um, and there's something, I'm just so grateful for the men and women that come on the show that are real and are willing to say the real things, because the episode that just came out was a friend of mine who was a drug dealer and an addict. And he just like in the interview casually is like, yeah, well, that year I calculated and I put $37,000 into my arm that year. And when you think about that, someone's like, wait, in his arm? And it's like, just even the way you said slinging dope and in it, like in his arm, it's just like, it's so authentic and real. And it makes people go, wait, what? And that's the part of these conversations that is so inspiring to me, because, you know, we've got to talk them out. We've got to be able to say the hard things, but thank you for even just being in the way you're saying things, not holding back, because there is an element of that needs to be said. Like, we can't sugarcoat those things. And your mom has incredible courage, because to go against what her family was probably telling her, to go against what her family, the scene looked like, the community looked like, to be able to say, no, that I want different for my son. That takes such an innate, deeply rooted courage and commitment to no matter what, because there's a lot of isolation in that, to do something different, to get something different, especially if it's family involved, especially if like even just, you know, shuffling you out to school meant asking people for help, right? Like, that's hard. All those things are hard. And so I mean, obviously she's incredible. And I thank her for all that she did. Obviously you thank her too, but I think there are women listening, there are moms listening that have their own versions of that, right? Have their own versions of hard, of what they've been able to do for their kids. And so by us having this conversation, by us, you know, just giving your mom her 15 seconds of fame on the Brittany Wheeler show, is also just letting other women who have done the same thing, like, yes, like, thank you for being willing to do the hard things, to change that, because your son will never know the life that you lived, right? He'll never know that. And
Never.
because of what your mom did, that is the reality. Her grandson and her great grandchildren will never know that life. And sometimes we can't even get to that point of our thinking process. We can't think about 2 generations deep. We can only think about today. We can only think about tomorrow. And so just such wisdom in her decision making, and the whys behind it.
Yeah, there's a term that I've heard kind of passed around, um, parent to parent, and it starts in the home, right? It starts in the home, and she was always kind of planting the seed, like, we're getting out of here, and never looking back. And she made it happen. So.
So cool. There's 2 other things that were stemming in my mind. If you, and you may not be able to answer this because it may not even exist because of your mom. So I'm going to say that, because so don't feel pressure if there isn't one. But if you can look back on your time, right, at 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, as you're literally living this parallel life, right? You're going to Northampton School District, and your cousins and friends are over here. Is there a moment that you can look back on now and see, like, where their childhood wonder went from childhood wonder to the realities of where they lived, the realities of the challenge and the hardships, and potentially, if you were still there, would have that had happened for you?
Yeah, I can kind of parallel that, I guess you could say. So I have a cousin who I am a month apart. My mother's older sister. We're exactly 30 days apart, and neither of us have brothers, so we grew up very close. His mother, my aunt, she battled addiction, right? Most of our childhood. Okay. Her drug of choice was crack cocaine, and that set my cousin up for failure. I can't really define it any other way. He's, I'm 32, he's 32. Again, we're a month apart. He has a daughter, who I don't know where she is. I don't really know much about her. I don't know where he is. We the last time we saw each other was probably 6 or 7 years ago, maybe more. I've had to leave my bed in the middle of the night to go pick him up. I've gotten phone calls or texts. I need you to pick me up at this address and bring $300, or they're not going to let me leave. I mean, the amount of love I have for him, and I hold a very special place for him in my heart. So I always did it. It was never any questions asked. I always did it. No matter what, and I knew like the reality of the situation. Like this is probably, like a trap house that I'm going to pick him up from.
Yeah.
But I would rather him be by my side, right, safe, if it's going, if it's going to cost me $300. And it's as simple as how we were raised, right? Like how we were programmed, I guess you could say, and the different wiring that my auntie had versus my mother. And it's very apparent, like that without those, with those different mindsets, resulted in he and I being complete opposites as far as how our lives were cultivated.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. And it's also just like so heavy and sad and all the things because there's your aunt wasn't paying herself, right? That's the reality, right? And so for her not to be able to do what your mother did isn't a lack of, gosh, she's a horrible person, since she was in pain and that, she
Right.
couldn't get past, she couldn't see past, and whatever that is, right? And and I pray, and I'll be praying for that cousin specifically, that that there is light, that there is some radical healing, that because people can change. I see it time and time and time again, right? I see what the Lord is doing all over the world, right? With addiction. And so I think your cousin can be just an example of that. The not last question, but last part of my brain segment that's been happening, which will be a great transition into one of the questions we're going to talk about. And I kind of wonder the impact it's even having as you've just grown and found yourself and found your identities within the different things you're doing now. But you talked about being at school and living a double life, like very Hannah Montana, very much like the person you were right at school was not the reality of the life that you lived at home. Do you think that has subconsciously kind of carried through to some of your adulthood in having to mask yourself or having to be someone completely different in order to keep guarded and keep safe? And
In a way or two, yes. And I will say that the last handful of years that has changed for me. Like when I first became a police officer in New Hampshire, um, and I'll again, nothing but candidness here, right? New Hampshire, the ethnic or brown population, however you want to say it, is less than 1%.
yeah,
The last I knew when I moved up here was, okay. So I was very self-conscious in how I spoke. And I emphasize how I spoke versus like how I write. Like, can I write a intelligent police report? Yes. But how I speak and how I write is very different. So I was very self-conscious about how I spoke because it was obvious that I wasn't from, this area when I would deal with people on the street. And that always translated into me getting, oh, you're not from around here, right? Or you're not from New Hampshire.
yeah,
And it used to bug me. And I'm not really sure why. Maybe just 'cause, I used to associate it with them, when I say them, people that I would deal with, on the job, I would associate it with maybe they're saying that I don't sound intelligent or that they think I'm not intelligent. But that's kind of gone away from me. And I think it's heavily to do with the way I speak has also gained me like a certain level of respect, being on the road, being on the street in uniform.
yeah. Almost like the part of yourself that you were most, self-conscious about was the actual thing that was going to help move the needle for you in your job.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. You want to know something really interesting? Because this is what God just blows my mind with, is like the things that people say are not adequate or were bullied for or were made fun of for. I remember for a long time throughout middle school, maybe high school even, that like my voice, like people would make fun of my voice. They would, it's too deep. You sound like a man. Like it was just like really hurtful things. And, fast forward X amount of years. And that's the voice that people are like, oh my gosh, like you should do a podcast. You have the best podcast voice. You have the best.
Hmm.
So it's just like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but like if somebody around you is speaking just hurtful things and putting things out that are not true, maybe attacking you in ways that are just feel really, really intentional, just ask yourself, is that true? And just watch how, you'll be using that as a gift. It'll be the thing that makes you special, not the thing that makes you any less worthy or any less different. Because we've not been immune to bullying at all.
Well said. Well said.
At all. And I mean, even just, you sharing, I mean, speaking of bullying, like you suffered a heart attack at
I
18
did.
years old.
I did. A mild heart attack 2 weeks after my high school graduation. That was a catalyst in me beginning my fitness journey. Um, it was scary. It was scary. It was eye-opening. It was humbling. It was a lot of things. I felt all the emotions when that happened. And I've been asked before by people that are, in my orbit, if you will, what was there a moment that drove you to kind of pedal to the metal into fitness? And that was definitely it. I mean, at that point, it was never did I ever once think that I would be a bodybuilder or that I would be, that I would be a fighter. I just wanted to make it to 21,
Yeah.
you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm. What ultimately, like, paint the picture for the audience, because you are a degree. I do believe that we can talk about hard things when we are a degree separated from them, meaning that we've healed through them, meaning that we are a degree separated from the person we were in that moment. And I believe that you have reached that as it relates to this experience. Just share with the audience, like, what was life like leading up to that, and ultimately what have you kind of assessed as like what led to that heart attack moment for you, literally having a heart attack.
So I never really associated my timelines with like my weight gain as a kid. When I say we, when my mother moved us out of the neighborhood where my family was and up to Northampton, she was working a ton so that we could afford the house that we were living in Northampton, and I would just eat and eat and eat and eat, and I really couldn't pinpoint for you what void I was trying to fill, or what have you. But I would just um, eat and eat and eat again and eat some more.
Yeah.
And when it's fun, not funny, but it's incidental, I guess you could say. When you look at pictures of me in my early childhood years, I'm talking like 4, 5, 6, 7. I was like a jacked little kid, um, because my mother would take me to the gym with her. She was in the army and was also a corrections officer, so she had access to different gyms. So we would go to YMCA, right? And then when we moved, that just kind of stopped. Um, and then into my teen years, I got my first job. I worked at Papa Gino's, and
Hey, the rustic pizza at
good
Papa
old,
Gino's, the
yeah,
pasta crust,
yes.
top notch, top notch.
Yes.
People from New England are like, Papa Gino's, yes, yes. So good.
Yeah. Um, I would probably put down like 4 to 5,000 calories in a day working there.
Why not?
Um,
It's so easy to.
why-
I mean, like,
yeah, Yes, it
and
is.
not for nothing, but like, it's not like you were like, and to be very honest, like, it's not like you were coming home to cooked meals every day. Your mom was hustling and working for your family. So like,
Yes.
what you ate at
Yes.
Papa Gino's sometimes was what you were going to have for dinner anyway. So that makes total
Absolutely.
sense. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like she always made sure there was food in the house, but I was then responsible for my own consumption of what I was eating, and that was never ever good decisions, you know. Um, and then when I would go back home, her side of the family there, my mother's side of the family is black and very the cuisine, if you will, is very southern, right? So
Mm-hmm.
everything is fried. Everything is fried. If you can if you can put cornmeal on it and throw it in a skillet, that's how my grandmother was cooking. So it wasn't hard to get up to 320 pounds by the time I was 18. Um, and then that resulted in me landing in a hospital bed with my, family around me. And I just, at that point, I was like, dude, you gotta make a change or you're not, you're not going to see 21.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many things that you know now that you didn't know then. There's so many things. I mean, like, X amount of years ago, like, we we don't we didn't know what we know now, period, right? And not that the information wasn't correct then around nutrition and wellness, but that it wasn't as accessible, right? And it wasn't easy to find and then, be able to educate people with. And so, I grew up in a as with a single mom where, like, yeah, like McDonald's and Papa Gino's and Friendlies and Applebee's, and like, the problem and the challenge with that is, like, I had grandparents that, like, loved to cook and always made sure that we had a good meal. But what that generation and our parents even still don't understand is the food that is being cooked in those places is meant to create addiction to them, right?
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
not that we were not being cared for, right? But I don't know if you experienced this in Massachusetts, but in New Hampshire, I was an athlete. I was a 9-season athlete all through high school, except for one year when I went to Concord High. I didn't play sports. We would stop at McDonald's for long trips. What? I'm sorry. Why are we feeding our high school kids McDonald's after they just
Yes.
played sports, right?
Right.
And then it's a
Right.
competition with all the kids of, like, oh, you want to get some, this is also at Wendy's, so it's wrong, but you want to get 2 JBCs and like a fry and like a 4-piece nug or whatever. And like, everyone's competing to eat these ultra processed, fully trans fat foods, right? After they just
Hang on to the layman, a JBC is a junior bacon cheeseburger.
Thank you for completing that for me because thank you.
I wasn't gonna let you. You can't sneak anything by me. Don't. Yeah.
But like, it's true, and like, true around the fact that, our parents were not doing something that they were not trying to hurt us, but the reality is those foods that we're eating were meant for us to make and want and create, the chemical compounds in our bodies to want more of that. And I can say that from experience. Those that know me from the show, that know me in real life, they know that I was, if you don't know now, I had gastric bypass in 2014. And when I went into surgery, I was 330 pounds. And I can relate to your story in such a literal way of not only your upbringing and what you were eating. And it's like, people are like, oh, just make better choices. It's like, it's not even about that, y'all. It's literally about the fact that, like, the chemical compound within my body was wanting the things that I shouldn't want. And we didn't have the education around food like we do now, so accessible to be like, oh, that's the problem. It's not that your body doesn't want fruits and veggies or that you shouldn't have them. It's that our mind and the connection to our gut was telling us, nah, you want the McDonald's, you want the fries, like, you want, the
Right.
Papa Gino's. And I think that's the lie, right? It's not that anybody was doing anything wrong. The lie was the food was creating the problem within us. And when you talk about just what you were experiencing, is like, I just kept eating and eating. I mean, obviously food was a comfort for me, so amongst all the
Yes.
changes and amongst all of the daddy issues and the many divorces that I experienced, like, what was the one thing that was always constant? Food.
Snacks. Snacks
Dunkaroos.
don't judge,
No,
right? Snacks don't judge.
snacks don't judge. That's real life. That's real life. Yeah. I think there's a lot of kids, we're all adults, but I think there's a lot of adults our age that were kids that experience what we experienced, right? Um, and some have been able to make different choices now. I think there's a lot of people, I don't know if you're experiencing this too, of just like friends and others that are like, yeah, no, we're not doing what happened back then. Like we're 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 going to be really intentional about how we eat and what we eat, and not be caught up in the fact that this is the only way to live, that there is multiple ways to consume food and how you eat it, and
Absolutely. Yes.
living well. How has that changed? Like how does nutrition and wellness look like for you as a father? As we just talked about what you were like as a son, and just experience that growing up, how has that changed? What does that look like for your son differently than you?
So I obviously my day to day, like my intake is so regimented, especially when I'm in prep for a show. But I don't push that onto, my son he's 3. But at the same time, he sees what dad's eating. He wants anything I'm doing, he wants to do. He wants to be a part of. So there's times where, I make him mac and cheese and dino nuggets, and he wants the green beans and the egg whites that are on dad's plate, right? And
Yes,
it's like
Joel. Yes.
he is he is such a unit. And I mean, like I look at him, I'm like, how do you have abs at 3?
I mean, but you did. You literally just told us 2 seconds ago that you were walking around as a
Right,
giant kid, so I'm
right,
not surprised.
yes. He doesn't stop moving. In that, it's, his mother actually said something to me a couple of weeks ago, and she said she was really thankful that I get to take him to the gym with me at the department, um, because he will mimic those movements. Anything that he sees me do, he wants to do it himself. He wants to try it. So he's at home using his toys, using his toys as dumbbells.
He's lifting. Oh, that's so
Yeah, you
so
know,
sweet.
um, he's 3, and his hobbies are the gym, boxing. He does typical 3-year-old stuff, but he really loves boxing. Like he really enjoys the sport of boxing, not just like flailing around.
Yeah,
He's got he's got better technique than some adults that I know.
so
So
sweet.
it's wonderful that he is seeing those things, and I really believe that I'm setting him up, um, at least physicality wise, to succeed.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually was just telling my roommate this because I don't remember where I heard it or where I read it, but the psychology around children follow, like as it relates to fathers or father figures, children mimic their eating habits. And so it's really important, like if you're sitting at the dinner table and, you know, there's a dad sitting at the dinner table and like makes a comment to his wife or girlfriend or partner or whatever, mocking the food, right? Or, nah, I don't want that. That is literally what the children are going to respond with, right? Like that's what they're going to see. And I can think back to my own experiences with my dad, and like there are foods and things that I love still this day because they were foods that he loved. And so there's definitely a psychology around that connection, and also a beautiful thing that you can do. And I think there's also, we don't know that we're doing it right, but it's just that intentionality of like, you're seeing that with your son and just organically, but then to know, oh, okay, he's going to look up to me and what I eat just based on the nature. And that's just how kids are as well. It gives you a whole perspective, right? And there's a lot of dads who don't like a lot of things, right? But it changes how you react to that if you know that your
Yes,
kids are going to then be that way too. And so you're going to shovel down the veggie that you don't like, or you're going to have a conversation with your partner on the side to be like, I don't put this on the plate because I'm not going to eat it, kind of thing. And allow your kids to experience as much of the good stuff, right? I thought that was fascinating. And so for you to say that like your son's like, no, I want the egg whites and green beans, I'm like, not shocked at all.
Yeah. Yes.
At all.
Yeah. I could put a Pop Tart or a waffle or something like that in front of him for breakfast. Nope. He wants eggs. He
And
wants eggs and egg whites.
and to be honest, like that must feel really amazing because that is like we grew up on waffles and Pop Tarts and Jimmy Dean biscuit sandwiches, right? So to know that the exact way
Yes.
you grew up, where that got you at such a young age, that your son's like, yeah, no, Dad, I am sorry. I would like the egg white omelet, please, with spinach and feta. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
At 3.
Yes.
At 3. Like, not like 12, not 10, 3.
Yep. It's wonderful. It's music to my ears every time.
So cool. So we've been talking a lot about hard things, so we're not void of it at this conversation. But I really want to spend some time to talk about what we talk about in the Brittany Wheeler Show, which is choosing your hard. In almost every episode, I ask the guest this question, and the context of choosing your hard is that you're at a crossroad moment. All the decisions that you're faced with are hard for whatever reason. None of them are easy. They're all going to be hard. But for whatever reason, the decision that you choose is ultimately going to lead you to the better version of yourself. Share with us a choosing your hard moment or multiple that come to mind.
In 2023, I got divorced, and around the same time, my work life was not going super well. And by like nothing, I don't mean like anything where I was like disciplined or anything like that. I mean what I was seeing kind of clustered around the same timeline as my divorce. I ultimately was involved in a case where it ended up being a homicide of an infant, and obviously as a parent, right? As a parent, that's awful. It's awful. It's the last thing you ever want to even be a part of. But yeah, there's no well, you know what? I'm gonna pass on this one.
Yeah.
We don't get to do that, unfortunately. The following week after being involved in that case, the following week is actually the same apartments. We had a retired officer from my agency take his own life, and it was such a typical police, like how a cop would commit suicide, right? It was everything was super organized, letters, combinations to like safes, passwords to computers, letters to the family, and this guy worked way before my time, but there are still a few at my agency that could speak about who he was, and he was, the guy you wanted to be, right? Like started our canine program, was just like a go-getter and knew how to do the job well. And next to him was a copy of his final divorce decree that he had been served. And it was that in conjunction with seeing, my first dead infant and my divorce, that led me to my first therapy session, because it was just a lot. It was a lot really fast, and I was just kind of having an inner dialogue with myself, having seen that suicide. I was just kind of thinking, this is how dark it could get if you don't talk to somebody. Like, this is how bad it could get. So I sought out a therapist that specifically works with first responders. In my first session, I sat in my car not wanting to go into the office. And I'm like, you know what? We'll do it another time. I was trying to convince myself to leave for so many different reasons. And I ended up going in. My first session, I just talked. I just like unloaded. Uh, I just talked for like an hour straight, and that was that was 2 years ago now, and um, I still am in therapy, and I don't know why it was such a hard thing for me to decide to do, or why the stigma behind seeking therapy and mental health as officers even exists. But it does, and specifically in my agency that I work for, we've got a good group that are really good about checking in on one another, and that's you really can't uh, you really can't beat that. We're a pretty close agency, and most of us have divulged in one way or another, even if it's just like in a quick passing conversation that you've talked to a therapist about something. And I think that's huge. This a senior officer, a training officer that I had said to me when I first started that policing is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and most of us have to do 25 years of service before we can retire. And the amount of the amount of trauma that you're going to see in that span, right, is just like it's monumental, and you're not going to make it if you just keep it inside. Okay, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. You're just not. You're gonna something bad's probably gonna happen. So that was uh, that was a choice that I made, not just for myself, but for those that love me, for my son, because I, if something happens to me on duty, that's different, right? That's unfortunately that's part of the job that I do. Um, but I would never ever want him to know a day without his father because I wasn't strong enough to say to myself, talk to somebody, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. You're welcome.
Thank you for sharing that. As you were talking, like I just started tearing up and just thinking of you and Kev and my roommate is a firefighter, and just we just forget, we forget that behind the uniform is a human that's not meant to carry all of it, that it's a human that suffers with their own stuff, and then on top of that, they're because of their job and because of their hearts to want to do good things, that they are faced with a lot of really dark, hard things. And just like thinking about that officer that, that the last straw was that divorce. And again, there's so many things that you could have like, I'm just thank you for being strong enough and to being the motivator to get the help, because I also just, I think of you and Kevin specifically and my roommate James, just incredible humans, like hearts that would carry the world, right? Like hearts that want to just do good all the time. And to think that uh, is that's at risk of being lost, that's heavy. And
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
uh, it just brought me to tears to think that like there are a lot of other people out there who are in your line of work as first responders who need it, and they need the help, and they need to to be given the opportunity to talk it out, because they just can't, like they just can't carry it. um so thank you for sharing that, being willing to share that and be willing to do something different, to get something different. I mean, genetically you're built for it because your mom set that standard for you
Hmm.
for a really long time. But Yeah, just thank you.
You're welcome.
Um, it's interesting. I have an interview coming up. There is a organization out of the Cape that I'll actually put you guys in a group text with Kevin and everybody. And it's this nonprofit that works to help police officers to give them life-saving equipment. So if they get to a scene too soon before the paramedics can come, there's like stuff that can just help. Like I'm pretty sure from what I understand, it can help like stop bleeding like immediately, like just to give more time. And they have this part of the nonprofit called SMAC, and it's Start Me Another Car, which is a slogan, or not a slogan, but it's a term, right, that you guys use,
Yes,
right?
yeah, love it. Love that.
And what is it?
That's a great name.
I was gonna say, share with everybody what Start Me Another Car means.
Well, so depending upon what officer is saying it, right? If I'm asking for another car, it means something bad's happening. It means get to where I am as fast as you can. Um, and that's, it could be as simple as, all right, I got somebody that I know is going to be in arrest, right? Or it could be I'm in a fight,
Yeah.
and that's all I can say over the radio because I can't get to my radio because I'm fighting.
Right.
Start me another car or send me another unit, right? It's help
Right.
is what you're really saying.
Right. So this organization, that element of the organization is all around help, whether that's paying for an officer to have a weekend away with family, whether it's helping with therapy, whether it's they just need a day away. That whole entity is about helping against the mental health and the struggle of the emotional torment and things that happen with officers. And so I will connect you guys because I think there's some incredible work that can be done with more more departments across New England, across the country, knowing that this is available, that this is a resource, that there's people on the ground doing this because they see the need, and it's evident that there's a need for it in Western New Hampshire, and there's a need for it all over, right, all over the country. But I'm excited to have that guest on and for him to share, as a police officer as well, his experiences, but also more detail what they're doing. But I'll connect you guys because. When everything happened with Kevin and then, you sharing this as well, like there's a need for that kind of support.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, there is.
To lighten it up a little bit, because everyone's been with us on this, extremely raw and heavy part of that conversation. I'd love to know, how have your dreams changed a little bit, and what do you hope to leave as a legacy as an officer now?
So, I forget which one of my idols, if you will, said this, but when it stuck with me when I heard it, he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he said, when they close the book that is your life, right, how is it going to read? And I think about that quite often in policing, or at least in my agency. Over the last 2 years, I kind of got the official okay to bring our defensive tactics and ground fighting program into the 21st century because it was very dated, as most are. I will tell you that there are agencies around New Hampshire that their defensive tactics, right? It's a PowerPoint. It is a PowerPoint, and that's one of our biggest areas of liability. It's one of our biggest areas where officers are injured or there's officer safety issues. I fought in my 20s in the ring and in the cage, and being able to, I'm not turning our police officers into MMA fighters, right? I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. But what I don't want is to ever roll up on a scene as a backup unit and see one of my coworkers, losing a fight, significantly, to the point where their life is in danger. And if I can put my coworkers in a position to one, have a level of confidence where one, maybe we're not pulling our firearm, right? Maybe we're not taking that gun out of the holster so quickly because there's a level of fear. Um, because I mean, it is what it is. I see that pretty often around around the country. Um, and two, backup's coming, right? Like that's what I try to stress to everybody. Work the problem, right? Backup's coming, whether it's 90 seconds away, whether it's 5 minutes away, we're coming. So the program that I put together with the assistance of Kevin, because Kevin wrestled, so we put together a program. We've got so far we have received tremendous feedback. Even some of the old timers that we thought were going to be pretty hesitant and give some pushback. I don't want to change anything that I do. I've been doing this since you were, before you were even walking. It hasn't been like that. Everybody's loved it. That is something that has really made me feel good, and I am hoping that I get to continue that. My chief has been a big supporter of it. He has sent me to some pretty expensive advanced schools and trainings so that I can kind of be the conduit for my coworkers and bridge the gap between defensive tactics, ground fighting, and what we do on patrol. So that's been wonderful. As far as legacy outside of the police world, and maybe it sounds a little, maybe it sounds a tad bit selfish, right? But the look that my son gives me sometimes, he's been at most of my competitions, and I've had the privilege of hoisting him up on my shoulders while holding a first place trophy. Those moments mean everything to me, and he wouldn't care one way or the other. I could not place at all, and he would still be screaming, Dada. But he just has this way of looking at me like I'm Mr. Incredible.
Yeah.
And that means everything to me. It fills my heart. And for him to, he can't say it right now because he's so young, but he looks at me like I'm his hero. That's all a guy needs. That's all I need.
Yeah. Okay, Joel, you gotta stop making me cry on my own show. You didn't give me a warning. I at least gave you the questions. You did not prep me that I was gonna cry. I think what is so beautiful is to see, and for me, I claim God. I know you believe in him as well. To just see how he's bringing you through what you are literally in these exact places for the right moments, for the right things, and to hear the kind of legacy you want to leave as an officer, where it's how can everything that I've ever done support and help to embetter what we do, what we're called to do, help these men feel more equipped. And we just love, because I think I know the answer, but I'd love to hear it from your mouth, because I think there's so much, I'm so grateful that you said what you said about firearms, but also, when you're thinking about trying to de-escalate a situation and a fight breaks out, right? And someone listening who may not have context to a lot of things may be like, oh gosh, Joel's going to prepare them to fight back. What I would love for you to share is, what is the ultimate, when you're thinking about wrestling or MMA or things like that, what is the ultimate goal for you bringing those tactics into the agency as a tool and as a resource?
I would say first, injury mitigation, right? For officers and, whoever the person is, subject, if you will, that's being arrested. Because at the end of the day, that's typically what we're doing. If we're fighting someone, if we're going hands on with someone, we're not in a boxing match. We're not in an MMA fight. We're not looking to score points. We're not looking for submissions. We're trying to effect an arrest and do it as quickly and as safely as possible. And in 2025, the optics of old school policing look really bad,
Yeah.
right? It just is. That's the reality of it. Um, so if we can, and here's the other part is I've been in a lot of fights in my 5-year career. Um, I've never once, I've never once thought for a second, am I looking to hurt anybody, right? If you are walking around, if you are walking around tuned up like that all the time, you are in the wrong profession, and I urge you to seek some sort of help, right? Um, the 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 level of calmness and collectedness that comes with practicing a martial art or a combat sport is second to none. Um, and I've really honed in on that during my policing career, because we wear body cameras, right? It's 2025. Everybody's wearing a body camera, most agencies. And, I've been pulled into certain, supervisor offices after an incident and where they're asking me why do you look so calm, right? Like I'm in the middle of a fight, and it just kind of comes with the territory. Um, so I really urge my coworkers or anyone that's listening, if you're thinking before you're listening to this podcast of maybe I would like to try some sort of combat sport or dip my toes into like a jiu-jitsu class, go do it. Go do it. It is seldom that you will walk into a MMA gym or, a specific BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym, dojo, whatever, and you're going to be met with ego. That just doesn't really exist, um, because the martial arts does away with that. Like it kind of wipes that away. Uh, and most coaches are really good about if they see someone that is in there with a chip on their shoulder, you're probably going to get pulled aside and told to come back at another time. I've seen that happen. I've seen guys walk in tuned up for whatever reason, and you're going 150% because you've got something to prove, and you're asked to leave, right? Because there's a lot of the time there's guys in there that might be professional fighters, and they're not acting like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a you will almost always be met with open arms. They might grab you and put you in
Yeah.
some sort of hold.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll be leveled out and brought to equal playing field with everybody else. Thank you for sharing that, because I think, again, I try on this show to, when I have guests on that are saying things that I understand, but that maybe somebody else doesn't have the same mindset as I do or the same way of thinking about things. And so they take it very literal. I try to make sure that I take the time for them to explain in context and in detail, because I mean, that's the point, right? The point is not injury. The point is self-defense, but also to feel confident, right? To have calm. There's so much more about what you are preparing your team to do outside of physically anything. It is the emotional, the mental state that you go into that. And thank you for also just being willing to call out other officers that may be listening of like, if you're going into that situation, something needs to change. This is not the way to do it. And also to kind of shed light on for people that maybe have been struggling with what they've been experiencing in this country, and they've just been wrestling with how can people do that, and to hear from an officer that is active duty, that is also working to solve the problem, to say, well, this is part of the problem, is that we're not equipping officers with the confidence and the skills and the poise and the calm and the sense of self to go into these situations, to not pull a gun, right? And on the other end, we're also saying that like there are still more, and the more is also, how are you taking care of your mind, right? How are you taking care of your soul and your body? Because they are equal parts. And so everybody listening today is hearing from someone that's not just in it, but also literally a part of making the change. And so if you've been struggling with why is this happening, there's so many different reasons, but ultimately in a very simple, factual way, those are two things that we can do. Not when, I mean, as police officers and leadership and officials within, the government, to ensure that these things can change, right, is by making these, to me, I just don't see roadblocks. So I just see these as like, well, anybody can do this, right? But that's just me. I don't see a lot of roadblocks. I'm just like, oh, a roadblock? Move it. Okay, cool.
Yes. I 100%. I agree with that. Well said. Well said.
If there's somebody listening who is a spouse, a friend, sibling of an officer or a first responder that can really relate to your journey, whether that's, just your growing up or just the struggle and that crossroad moment of making the decision to get therapy, and they can see it, right? I think they can see it. They can see their loved one struggling. They can see their loved one making the same decision over and over again. As someone who's gone through it, as someone who has made the decision for yourself to be better in your body and your mind and your soul, what advice or words of encouragement or anything would you give to those loved ones to help their person, their first responder, to maybe even take the steps themselves to seek help, to do something different, to get something different? What would you say?
It's okay that you're not okay. And that might come off corny, but that's really everything that you need to say, everything that needs to be put into words. It's in one day, in one shift, in one day, you could see 10 to 20, 30 significant traumatic incidents, right? That's going to take a toll on you. It's going to take a toll on your mental. So it's okay that you're not okay. Point blank, period.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I know that, you highlighted it earlier. My roommate specifically has shared with me, again, as a firefighter, going in and seeing things that are really messed up, and, you can't, but not wanting to bring that home, not wanting to you can't, right? Like, for a lot of different reasons, you just can't vomit that onto people that don't have experience, or just, you don't want to, right? And so, he shared going to therapy the first time and it didn't work. And he went again, and he specifically sought out a therapist that works with first responders. So if you're listening and you know someone who's tried therapy and they're a first responder, didn't work, ask the question, did this therapist have trained experience in working with first responders? And if they didn't, then that is the direction they need to seek out, because ever since then, my roommate has had an incredible experience. You've also shared that you had an incredible experience with your therapist, because they know how to work with you. They know how to speak your language, if you will, and understand and create space big enough for all that you're carrying, which is so vast, compared to potentially somebody that's, working an office job. It's not belittling, right? It's just the gravity of some of those things that they are carrying.
Absolutely. Yes. It's just a different level of stressors, right? From your work life. That's all.
Yeah. Is there anything else that is coming to mind? Anything that's been stirring in you that you want to share? It could be anything, just before we wrap up.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on, what we were talking about with the martial arts aspect and how that can tie into your mental health. I just finished a book called Be Like Water, and it is essentially all the teachings of Bruce Lee, written by his daughter. And I'm a big fan of Bruce Lee, and if you don't know who that is, I feel like most do. He's most famous for his physicality and his expertise in the martial arts world, but he was also an incredible intellect, very insightful, and the lessons that he would tie into his teachings in martial arts, it has really even it's furthered my level of trying to strive for some level of inner peace, if you will. Um, so highly recommend, not just sharpening your skill set in the physical sense as far as a combat sport or martial arts, but the if you are capable, if you're capable of, a level of calculated violence, if you will, when necessary, but can also articulate what it is you're feeling or what it is you're thinking, the world is yours.
That's good. That's good. I have two lifestyle questions, which are a little bit lighter than a lot of our conversation. But
Wonderful, wonderful.
what is your favorite coffee shop in Western New Hampshire, Keene area, and what's your go-to order?
So the go-to spot for a lot of us is prime roast coffee.
Yeah.
Yes, when I can have it, meaning when I'm not in season for a show, turtle latte. If you've never had a turtle latte, it tastes like a chocolate turtle in a cup. It has all the sugar. It has all the sugar.
Yeah.
I think it's like hazelnut, chocolate, caramel, and butter pecan, right? But it's so good, and I'll do one every few weeks or something like that. Yeah, you can't beat it.
So good. Prime roast is really good. And when you walk into prime roast, you like the smell it's intoxicating, honestly. And you're just like it's
Yes.
warm and fuzzy inside. And then you if you don't like coffee, I think the way that prime roast smells makes you want to like coffee. It's
Yep.
like
Yep.
so good in there.
Yes.
So good. Yeah, and we like in I say we as if I still live there, but I mean compared to when I went to school there, there's so many amazing coffee shops that are popping up in that area that like back in the day was just dunks, you know? That's all
Yeah.
that's all we
Yeah.
had back in the day. But also I know you shared a book already, but if there's another one, please share it. What is a book that you've read multiple times that you think somebody that's listening should read?
Sure. Discipline equals freedom. That is written by Jocko Willink, um, who's a bit extreme. He can come off a bit extreme. He's known for his 4 a.m. wake ups, and the guy just gets after it. But that being said, there are takeaways from his book where if you are struggling to find motivation in yourself, or what can motivate you, or why you should feel motivated just by yourself with no external forces, it's a good read.
Yeah. That's so good. Yeah, discipline. It's like it's life changing. You and I have talked about that too when we first connected a couple months back. Like discipline is freedom, and it's all relative, right? Like you may not be a 4 a.m. club person, right? But what in your life, can you be disciplined on? And I even was just talking to a friend, and just the other day I was like sharing wins because I didn't feel like doing these things. I like to cook. I enjoy it. It's an art form for me, but I also like to have things on hand. I like to make some things that, like I make homemade bread and I like to have muffins that I only have with honey and oats and things that like I can feel good about having and not feel like beat myself up on or go out and get something that I know maybe isn't going to serve me. And it's a whole thing, right? That's where I am at in my health and wellness journey. But yet it takes time, right? There's been a lot going on.
Right.
There's been a lot of life that has happened at me in the past like 2 weeks, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to. And so the other day I was like, you know what, I'm going to make these muffins. And I make cookies and I freeze the cookie dough so that I can just like have one cookie. I don't need to have 2 or 3 or 5 or 10. And again, I know the ingredients, so like it's better than getting something ultra processed or whatever. And so I remember like being like asking myself, okay, I'm going to make these muffins, but maybe I'll make these cookies tomorrow. And I was like, no, Brittany, what would your future self, what would your tomorrow self be grateful for that you did tonight? Because when tomorrow happens and something comes up, right? You're a dad, you understand there are things that you can't control that are going to come up.
Yep.
And it's like, okay,
Yep.
if I can do that now, will my future self be grateful? And I did. I made cookies, I made dinner, I made bread, and I made muffins, and my future self has been very pleased. But that takes discipline. I also, like, I was eating the cookies and I was like, dang, girl, like, I'm shooting my own horn because I was like, these cookies are really good. But it is asking, like, and that to me, sometimes when people are trying to get started, right? And you and I both know this from fitness and from wellness and just health. We immediately are like, okay, I need to do 17,000 things, because if I don't do those things, I'm not going to be successful. I'm not going to lose the weight. I'm not going to, be able to meet the metrics, whatever. But the reality is that's why most people stop, is because they try to do all the 17 things and you can't. And so sometimes, paralleled with discipline, I believe if you can just ask yourself a simple question of what will my future self be grateful for if I did right now? What is that one thing, right? And that's all it takes to move the needle. One thing.
Absolutely. I think you already touched on it, right? Small victories. Small victories.
Yeah.
You got to soak in those moments where you did something that your tomorrow self will be glad you did.
So good.
And then that turns into a habit. Habit turns into a lifestyle.
Yeah. I'm feeling like we need to have another episode in a little bit. I feel like we could just talk about discipline, health, wellness, like just how to go from the extremes of where we were at, right, to where we are now on the opposite of extreme, right? So yeah, we're gonna do another episode. So you just hang tight, sir, because I'm like, that would be just another awesome podcast conversation. That you and I could have back and forth of just how to help people in that way. Because, you were 320 pounds. I was 330 pounds. Both of us, in our teens and 20s, making the decisions and the choices. But even once we made those first decisions and choices, once I had a lot of insecurity about gastric bypass, that people would think like, oh, it was the easy way out. And the reality is it's not. And then also it takes a lot of discipline and work and change and growth after that. And the same thing for you. Like once you started going to the gym, and you were losing the weight, it didn't, that wasn't just it. And there was also a lot of shortcuts people were trying to offer you along the way, right? That wouldn't create sustainability.
Right.
So cool.
Right.
So cool. Thank you. Literally. So like this, I could just like go accomplish anything right now. So I hope that our guests feel that way.
Yes. Yeah. That's, if we kind of instilled that in anybody, I think we did a great job.
Yes. Thank you, literally, Joel, so much thank you for saying yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's a wonderful experience. My first time on a podcast.
It's your first, but not going to be your last. I'm telling you what, you're just getting started, my friend, in a lot of areas. And I'm grateful that you can look back and be like, oh, I remember 2025. This is my Southern accent because I live in North Carolina. 2025, when I was asked to be on the Brittany Wheeler show. Oh, what the simple days were like back then. Like, that's what it's going to be, is you're going to look back and be like, wow, that was my first podcast. And look at where I am now. It's really cool.
All right. That sounds good to me.
All right. Yeah. Just let me put it out there and then you just follow. And if you can't see it for yourself, I'll see it for you. And then you can just be like, oh yeah, Britt did say this would be first of many. She was right.
Gosh golly, she had it the whole time.
Gosh golly. I want you to start saying that on shift. That's going to be the new thing that you've got to put. You get out of the car and you say, gosh golly, looks like you were speeding. Can I see your license and registration, please? And see what they do.
Yeah. You got it.
He's so funny.
You got it.
Oh, you guys, share this flipping episode. If you don't, I'm going to be mad at all of you. This is incredible. Everybody knows somebody that can hear Joel's story, that can hear this conversation, that will educate them personally, that there is good and change happening within our law enforcement, that there are people behind the uniforms, that there are men willing to do hard things, and women doing hard things, that you can come from the projects and change the generational curse in your life. You got literally pick one sentence and there's 90 different people that can listen to this story. So share this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see more of these come up on your preferred stat. I don't even know what the YouTubers call it these days, but follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and just, share this episode, you guys. This was an incredible conversation for me. And Joel, again, thank you so much for coming. It's an honor.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. You guys, as always, do good things, make me proud, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.